Now we are going to discuss about the 2015 MCQ 13th question. With a downward sloping market demand curve and an upward sloping market supply curve for a product, a decrease in input price will. So here you can see S1, that is the upward sloping market supply curve, and the demand curve left to rightward downward sloping demand curve you can see here, and we mark P1 and Q1 as the equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. You know, when input price will when upward sloping market supply curve for product, a decrease in input price will. Decrease in input price. First of all, we should have to learn about what are the inputs. You know, that is the production resources, that means factors of production, that means land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship. Prices are decreased. Then prices are decreased means, you know, the cost is low for the supplier. That means the supplier like to supply more. That's why the supply curve shift to rightward and the price decrease and quantity increase. So decrease equilibrium price and increase equilibrium quantity here. Then following question, a small country's domestic market demand curve and supply curve for sugar are respectively represented by the following equations. QD equal 320 minus 3P, QS equal minus 80 plus 2P. Assume that the sugar market is open to international trade and the world market price of sugar is 60 rupees per unit. What is the quantity of sugar that are domestically supplied when the country is open to international trade? So, first of all, you have to find out the equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity, because you have the QD and QS equations. You can equal both QD and QS equations like that. QD 320 minus 3P minus 8 plus 2P. Same things should be goes to same side. Then you can see minus 80 goes to here, plus 80 minus 3P go to here, plus 3P. Now the price is 80. When you find out the equilibrium quantity, you can add your equilibrium price, demand curve or demand equation or supply equation. I add 80 price for the demand equation. Now the equilibrium quantity is 80. So like this, I draw the diagram. It's easy to find out all the things through a diagram. You can simplify everything and find out the answer through like this diagram. Then this is your QS supply, and this is your demand, and equilibrium price is 80 and equilibrium quantity is 80. Then they mention, assume sugar market is open to international trade. Now the price of sugar is 60 per unit. Here this is the 60. This is the global market price. So it is parallel to the quantity axis. Then you have to find out the domestic market supply. This is your this is your supply curve, and the supply curve intersect where the place the 60 market price. So the intersect here, at that time the quantity we have to find out, and the demand curve intersect the price here 60, that is the demand, intersect the quantity, this is the demand. Children, you have equations. QD equation, you can add this this price 60 rupees for the demand equation, because we have to find out the intersect place of the demand here. This quantity we have to find out. Here I add for the demand equation the price 60, then this is the demand here 140. Then for the supply equation you can add, and you can find out the 60 intersect the quantity here, the domestic supply, that is I add here QS. For the QS equation, the 60 I add, it is the 40. Then this is domestic supply, because this is your domestic supply curve and the demand here 140. In 60 rupees they demand more, that is the 140, but domestically like to supply 40. So 40 to 140 up to here we have to fill from the international trade. But they ask the question domestic supply. So the domestic supply is 40. You can add 60 rupees for the QS equation and find out the domestic supply. Then 15th question. Suppose the demand for petrol is very inelastic and supply is very elastic, and excise tax on petrol will be borne. You have to know how to draw the elastic and inelastic curves. That is important. You have sound knowledge about that. When you do more exercises, you can have that knowledge. So children, this is the very elastic supply curve and very inelastic demand curve, and it equilibrium here P1 and Q1. Then you know this is tax. The supply curve shift to leftward and the equilibrium price, new equilibrium price is P2 and the quantity is Q2. Children, you have to know, you have to remember all the time, you forget about this one, that is the how to find out the tax. So you have to identify the new equilibrium quantity. The new equilibrium quantity where the place the previous before supply curve intersect, this is the new equilibrium quantity. Previous supply curve intersect, you have to draw to here the price. Now P3 to P2 equilibrium price, new equilibrium price, this is the tax. So you know the consumer is above the price and also the produce is the below the price. So this is the consumer's tax burden P1 to P2 and the producer's tax burden P3 to P1. Here P1 P2 tax burden by the consumer, P1 P3 tax burden by the producer. So the more tax burden by the consumer P1 to P2 1. So more heavily by buyers. Then the graph shows the demand and supply curves in a competitive market for an agricultural commodity. S1 and D1, the equilibrium price 4 and the quantity 40. S2, I draw this one. S2, after I'll tell how to find out this one. The government wants to promote the production of this commodity and decides to pay producers a subsidy of 2 rupees per unit that they produce. The consumer supply after the subsidy. You know the subsidy. Subsidy is a good one. So it reduces the price. Then here I draw the new supply curve. It's shifted to rightward because this is a good one. Now it begins from the origin because the price reducing. Now the equilibrium price is 3 and equilibrium quantity is 60. So we have to find out consumer surplus after subsidy. So consumer surplus, you have to remember, that is above the equilibrium price. This is your equilibrium price. Above the equilibrium price triangle is the consumer surplus. So you have a equation. So this is the equation. You have an equation. This is the equation. Consumer surplus equal half into maximum price consumer willing to pay minus equilibrium price into equilibrium quantity. So from the diagram, this is the maximum price consumer willing to pay and this is the equilibrium price and this is the equilibrium quantity. The triangle. So you can see here, add these things to this equation and find out the consumer surplus. Okay, then 17th question. The price ceiling set below the market equilibrium price will result in price ceiling. Children, it's easy. When you know the price ceiling, how to draw the price ceiling, you can find out simply excess, it is excess demand or excess supply. So price ceiling, they mention here below the market equilibrium price. So demand and supply curves, normally the equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity you can mark. Then below the equilibrium price, that is the P2, this is the maximum price or price ceiling. Price ceiling at for the when government think about that the equilibrium price is not good for the consumers, they impose the maximum price. So when we think about the price is a consideration good 60, the government thinks that the consumer cannot purchase that good, they impose the less price like that 40. So here that is the maximum price price ceiling. That means the producers cannot sell this product greater than this. This is the maximum one. So here the maximum price, this is the demand curve which intersect the demand curve, the maximum price, that is the demand QD. You have to mark like this. Then P2 maximum price, where the place the supply curve intersect, that is the supply. For the maximum price, the supply is like to supply this amount, supply curve intersect. You have to find out the intersect places. Then demand, they like to purchase this amount, the demand curve intersect the maximum price, is the quantity demand they like to demand. Here QS to QD, QS the supply, QD is greater than that, greater than the supply. So this is the excess demand. That is the way of find out the excess demand. If you have the sound knowledge of how to find out the maximum price, draw a diagram. So you need not to remember all the things. You only think that you have to remember, that is see how to draw the maximum price, then you can easily find out the excess demand or excess supply.